Hey everybody, I'm Joe, and around here we like to talk about monsters. So what is a monster? If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition especially, or exclusively, it would make sense for you to think of a monster as some creature that is going to be powerful and strange in some way, and is going to be an antagonist against your players, is going to be difficult in combat, and might, if it's intelligent enough, be the primary antagonist for a story arc or maybe a whole campaign. And that would make a lot of sense. If you've played other RPGs, you are more likely to have dealt with humanoids being serious antagonists in the worlds that you've populated. And I've spoken a few times on this channel about building playable characters as villains. And I even had some thoughts about some very good subclasses to create villains and villainous characters. So I love the idea of building playable characters that are antagonists, that can be a monster in the storytelling way that we think of them. Now, at a certain level of character progression, it's very difficult to build a playable character that is still a significant challenge. But I would argue, at least through the first 10 or 11 levels of play, it still is very possible, maybe even at higher levels, and depending on how big the party is that you are working with. So I want to talk about that today, and I want to talk about something I'm doing in my game, and I think might be a fun idea to pass on to you to do in your games, in building monstrous characters. Now, of course, we could take a look at our story, at the NPCs that our characters are going to run into, at the story arc that we envision placing in front of them, and simply building a playable character that is going to be an NPC off of the world. And it would make total sense to do so, and basing the villainous NPC off of the story is a legitimate and very fun way to go. It works. Is there another route? And I would argue there is, and that's basing villainous NPCs off of the players. So let me tell you what I'm doing in my game. I decided this a long time ago, that in the main campaign I'm running, I wanted an evil version of every single playing character, every single PC. I have at my table a Dwarven Barbarian, a Half-Elf Bard, a Half-Elf Druid, and a Dragonborn Ranger. And I decided that I wanted to build evil versions of these characters. I would limit myself to doing the same basic class, though not subclass. I would at least start any build with the class that my player started in, so I didn't have different proficiencies and different saving throws. I would build them to be a reasonable challenge at the level that my players would encounter them, and I would stick to the build rules as written. And those are the things I set up because I wanted my players to run into these alternate versions of what they could have been had they been evil. And I thought this would be a fun story arc that would go throughout the campaign. For instance, in earlier levels, my lawful good barbarian dwarf, who has a character backstory of being a soldier who was honorably discharged, I wanted to build an evil version of that. So I built a mountain dwarf, barbarian, and I thought if we have a lawful good soldier, I needed an evil version, and that struck me as a mercenary. So I built a berserker barbarian that led a mercenary gang that they had to fight, and it was an evil version of what this player could have been. I have a College of Glamour bard, and out there in the world, and they have not encountered this character yet, there is a College of Eloquence, half-elf bard, that is waiting to attack them. Today I want to build one of those characters with you and show you how I think through the process. And my hope is throughout this character and throughout my players running into these characters, they enjoy seeing these alternate realities. I want to do a build of an evil ranger. And I want the ranger to be built not necessarily as the most powerful ranger that I can build, but instead one that fits. So let me tell you what we're going to build today. We're going to build an evil dragonborn ranger that is going to be a nice challenge when this character runs into my players at level 8. That means I want to put this character at somewhere around maybe level 11 or 12, and they might have some other smaller minions that are on the battlefield as well. My playing character, wanted a backstory where as a dragonborn they were discarded. They were thrown away as a child into the Underdark and grew up and scratched a living in the Underdark, clawed her way out, quite literally, into the material plane. And that was the character. Now this player has a level 8 Beastmaster Ranger, no multiclassing. And I thought that's a really fun character. We've had a lot of fun with the progression of this character, and the way the player plays this character is incredibly fun. So I thought, what else would work? She built a character that maintains the idea of not just being evil to get what she wants, and in fact went Beastmaster to find some way of having some compassion in the world. And it's been a great progression. So I thought, what would happen if this character had turned evil? And we're going to start Ranger, but I think we're going to multi-class this build for not just power reasons, but for character progression reasons. And I want the decisions to feel reasonable. So we take a look at our Ranger subclasses, and let's decide what feels like an appropriate Ranger that is going to be a Dragonborn that lives in the Underdark. So we're going Gloomstalker with this character, and if you have not examined the Gloomstalker, it's a wonderful subclass. We're only going to look at its abilities that go through level 8, because that's the number of Ranger levels we will be taking with this monster. We get a couple things at 3rd level. The first thing is a bonus to initiative rolls. We're actually going to be doubling down on this, because this is a creature that wants to ambush and kill in the first round of combat. That's what it wants, okay? So we get a bonus to our initiative rolls that's equal to our wisdom modifier. Later on, we're going to be doubling down on this idea. We want to have a stupid initiative roll bonus with this character. We get a couple additional things. One that we're not going to use with Dread Ambusher is we get a bonus to our movement speed during combat of 10 feet, which is great, but for reasons we're going to explore later, we're not going to be using it, at least not normally. The main reason people love the Gloomstalker Ranger is that every round of combat, if you take the attack action, you get an additional attack, which does an additional 1d8 of damage. That's awesome. It's a wonderful feature. It means that the Gloomstalker hits early and hits hard, which we love, right? The idea, if you are living in the Underdark and there are big monsters around and you need to jump on them, you want to kill them in one round. That's how you survive. This feels appropriate, and it's the main ability that meant I wanted to go here rather than Monster Slayer or Hunter. The next reason why we are going Gloomstalker is the 3rd level ability called Umbral Sight. You gain dark vision if you don't already have it. And the second thing that's enormously powerful here is if there's another creature that relies on dark vision to see you in the dark, it can't. It has to use something else, such as blind fighting or true sight or something like that. This means that it is a subclass that survives in the dark better than anybody else, with maybe the exceptions of things like Way of the Shadow monks. Again, this fits the theme of living in the Underdark better. At 7th level, we get Iron Mind, which gives us proficiency in wisdom saving throws, and while this is very nice, don't get me wrong, additional saving throw proficiencies are always welcome, instead I would say that it's the one ability here that's not thematically necessary, but everything else about the Gloomstalker feels good, and we haven't even mentioned the spell list. So the Gloomstalker Ranger gets an unreal spell list. So additional spells added are Disguise Self, Rope Trick, Fear, Greater Invisibility, as if we needed that already, and Seeming. All things that are thematically appropriate for this character, this creature. I love this spell list. Rope Trick on a character like this is just going to be amazing. So we're going to take a Ranger at level 1 and we're going to build this character with 8 levels of Ranger. So let's go ahead and see what we can do when we start our build. So we're taking Ranger levels right away at level 1, and that means we're going to gain the proficiencies from the Ranger. We're going to get proficiency in light, medium armor, and shields. We'll be using the best armor that does not give us disadvantage on stealth, of course, and we are going to have a longbow, which means we're not going to be taking a shield. Why a longbow? Because my player uses a longbow, and so I want to mimic the way my player fights. Again, I'm making an evil version of a character, so we're going to do that. We're going to have a longbow that's two-handed. We're not going to use a shield. So armor class is going to go down a little bit. That's okay. We're going to have some skills that we get to pick up with proficiencies. We're going to take survival. We're going to take stealth. And we are going to probably take perception in order to kind of round out what feels right for this character. Now we have a real question when it comes to favored enemies. And here, it's really important for the DM to make sure that you don't metagame the same way we don't want our players to. Obviously, if I want to build a Ranger that's going to try and hunt and kill my players better, I'd make the favored enemy humanoids. That would make sense. However, I don't think that that is my preferred way of operating. This is a character that is surviving in the Underdark, and so aberrations is just going to make more sense. I know it's not going to be the most mechanically superior way to build the character, but realistically, that's what makes sense. So we're going to go with our first favorite enemy as aberrations. So if you were building a character like this, you might stop there, but we get an additional favored enemy at level 6 in Ranger. I will be taking this character to level 6. What's in the Underdark? Well, it's aberrations, Duragar, Drow, and any pesky adventurers who wander down there. So taking humanoids as my second favorite enemy, that makes sense. Since I'll be taking 8 levels of Ranger, I can take my second favorite enemy as humanoids. And I think I can do it in a way that is not metagaming, all right? So the order is important depending on what level you build a character like this too. When we come to Natural Explorer, what type of environment are we gonna take? Well, it's going to be the Underdark, right? That just feels right. And as far as the second natural terrain, I don't think it really matters all that much for this character. It depends on how long they've been out of the Underdark and searching for my players to fight them, or if my players are coming into the Underdark to fight them. So consider that appropriately for the character. So we've taken 8 levels of Ranger. We could take Ranger all the way if we wanted to, but is that the way that I want to build this character? Not necessarily. I want this character to be built in a way that is going to be a survivalist. So going straight Ranger could work. But I think multi-classing is actually the way I'm going to build this. So you might have your own opinions on this. If I'm saying, hey, I'm going to build a character that is going to be an evil version of a PC, maybe we don't want to do any multi-classing that the player has not done, and I would totally understand that. I'm not going to limit myself there, but it would make sense if I did. Okay, so I understand that. So how would we multi-class this? I see 2 good options. The first one is Fighter. Going into Fighter is going to give us a couple major benefits. The first one, of course, is Second Wind. The second one, which we're all thinking about, is Action Surge. What better way to ambush somebody than to do your 3 attacks in your first round, because we have attack, action, second attack, dread ambusher attack, action surge, do it all again. The wording of Dread Ambusher says when you make the attack action, you can make an additional attack. It does not say once per round. Therefore, a multi-class into fighter, when we use our action surge, would get 6 attacks in round 1, which is insane. That enemy's dead, right? And it's a great way to build the character, and if you wanted to do that for a character you were building to play or for making an evil NPC, I think it makes sense. Go for it. There would be some great fighters to choose from. The Battle Master is a classic because a lot of the maneuvers do not specify melee. They will work at range. And even if you did a melee ranger, obviously they could still work, which would be great. I think the Battle Master is such a flexible subclass. It works in any environment because it only says that this fighter has been training. It doesn't say anything about the environment. I don't think Cavalier or Champion or Eldritch Knight are going to work very well because they all kind of imply that this is a fighter in a city, in a populated environment, maybe a fighter that works for the crown or for an army or for a cause. And we need an isolated fighter. So the samurai won't work, the gunslinger, if you did that subclass, that wouldn't work. None of these feel isolated enough. We could go Rune Knight here, and that would add some magical flavor. And a Rune Knight's an awesome subclass. Does it feel most appropriate? I'm not sure, because we could indicate that this character has been studying magic in the dark. So Rune Knight, you could go, it would work. As much as I love the Echo Knight, which is obviously an amazing subclass, the Echo Knight, it would be amazing, and you could use the Echo Knight's ability to be able to attack in addition with the Echo. I think it's Constitution modifier times per day, and do that as part of your action surge. And there's this bombardment of arrows happening in round 1. It would be devastating to the players. So that would work. Does it fit the theme of the way you want to build this particular creature? It absolutely can. I want to go a little bit lower magic though, and the Echo manifestation, the runes from the Rune Knight, those are great and could work, but I'm not going to go fighter here, as much as action surge would be amazing. Instead, I think I want to go rogue. Now we've got the same problem with rogue that we had with most of the fighter subclasses, and that is that most of the rogues thematically feel like they belong in populated environments. The assassin actually pairs with the Gloomstalker Ranger unbelievably well, because the Gloomstalker can hide in darkness even against creatures with dark vision. It gets a bonus to its initiative, so it gets to go first in combat, it can be hidden, and that would trigger the assassinate ability of the assassin rogue, which would be an auto crit. So you'd have an advantage roll, auto crit first attack, and then 2 more attacks after that. So pairing an assassin with a Gloomstalker is amazing. The problem is that the assassin feels thematically like it needs to be in populated environments. Don't forget, the assassin has a subclass ability to be able to mimic somebody else at higher levels. That is not an isolated Underdark ability. So mechanically speaking, the assassin would be great, but I'm not going assassin. Other rogue archetypes feel like they belong in populated environments. The Arcane Trickster, the Inquisitive, the Mastermind, the Soul Knife, the Swashbuckler, the Thief. All of these feel like they need to be part of just populated environments. I mentioned in a previous video that I think the Swashbuckler Rogue is one of the best opportunities thematically for an evil NPC, but I don't believe it fits with an Underdark character. So the Soul Knife is a very beloved character of mine, but it definitely does not feel like it needs to be in the Underdark. This is a high society character to me. The Phantom could work, and I love the Phantom. I've seen it in play do some pretty cool things, but I think the rogue that fits best for an Underdark character is the Scout. So we're not going to get all that much out of the Scout subclass because we're only taking 4 levels. And why did we take it? Well, we took it because it thematically fits. I want this to feel reasonable, that this is a character that could come out of this environment. The Scout subclass is going to give us 2 things because we're only taking 4 levels. The first one is Skirmisher, which is going to be pretty useful. It allows us to move half our speed when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet. This is a character that wants to attack from range, so this is useful. It's going to move away. Survivalist is going to give us 2 additional proficiencies in nature and survival, which is awesome. The Rogue class is going to give us 3 things we really want, and we would have got them with any subclass, but we chose Scout for the thematic reasons. The first one, of course, is sneak attack damage. Awesome. The second thing that's going to be useful is expertise, which we're going to be taking in stealth, of course. And the third thing is the optional class feature, steady aim, which allows us to use our bonus action to gain advantage on one attack if we don't move. That's wonderful. And guess what? Having advantage automatically triggers sneak attack. So how does combat look for this character? Bonus action, steady aim, and then attack with advantage on our first attack, which is going to double our chances for a crit, and we're going to get a nice amount of damage out of that first attack, and then do 2 more. So our bonus action is going to always be useful for us. We will probably use it for steady aim, but we might use it to hide. That's a possibility as well. If something comes close to us, we use our reaction to move away from our Scout subclass, and we're going to get 3 attacks per turn. So that's the way combat looks for this character. It's simple, it's straightforward. If we have time before combat, we might cast Rope Trick and hide in an extra dimensional space, pop down and shoot, and then pop back up, which could be devastating for our players. Because remember, if we pop down, we can still do bonus action for steady aim. We're not going to be doing any significant movement. Fire 3 times, pop back up the rope. Now let's take a look at this build. We're going to get 3 opportunities for ASIs or feats. So how are we going to accommodate those scores? Build your character in a way that feels fair. And if you're going to do this character, or a character like it, I think taking a point buy or taking the standard array is going to make a lot of sense. Now, there are 2 feats I'd really like on this character. And so there's no reason that with point allocation and taking one of our ASIs as an ASI, we could at least get an 18 on this character. Should be totally doable. If you did a custom lineage, of course, we'd be able to get a free feat and therefore do an ASI and get up to 20 with our dexterity. So there's different ways of being able to do allocations here, but you should be able to get your main attacking bonus as a +4, if not a +5. Now, for something like this, what feats are we going to want? And the first one is Alert. Remember, this is a character that gets a bonus to its initiative roll that's equal to its wisdom modifier. So I'm going to take my top ability score as Dex, second is Wisdom. Adding to that with Alert is going to be huge. Okay, we're going to get a +5 to our initiative, plus our dexterity bonus, which is going to be +4 or +5, plus our wisdom, which is going to be a +2 or a +3. I have built this character and been able to build it at an initiative of +12. With custom lineage, +11 if I did non-custom lineage. That's an enormous initiative bonus. It's one of the highest I've been able to build in a character. So Alert's also going to mean that this character can't be surprised, which is going to be useful if my players start really coming up with good plans to go and hunt the hunter. What's the second one? Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter is so unendingly useful. It's going to allow us to ignore cover. and it is going to give us extra damage at the expense of our 2-hit bonus, which is totally acceptable since we'll be attacking with advantage on our first attack every turn. So as a result, we're going to be adding in a +10 damage on at least that first attack. We might take it for our other ones, we might not. It just depends on how confident this character feels. So that's how I'm going to build this particular character for my game. But the real key takeaway is the thought process of building a character that is going to be an evil version of a PC and doing it in a way that feels realistic. This is a fun way to populate your world with great villains that your players will love to hate. If you've built some amazing NPCs, I would love to hear about it. YouTube is literally made out of buttons. They're all over here. Go ahead and press them, and I look forward to seeing you next time.